You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk 1150 AM. Now, back to the show with local mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell.
You are listening to the Money Hour at 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, January 29th show. You can also listen to my podcast, Facebook premiere, or the show on show YouTube channel. I am your host, Tina Mitchell, and your local mortgage expert, bringing into studio each week the best of the best experts in our local market on everything regarding your money. Now in studio, I have Elisia Howard of College Insights, paying for college without going broke, right here on 1150 AM KKNW. Elisia, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me today.
Yeah. So getting into staying on the theme of our college topic here, how can you start early in the college planning process for families saving money?
Yeah, so just from the financial side, because there's also like the academics and all those things. But from the financial side, I always tell families, like, if you can, and you and Doug kind of touched on this, because obviously we're all trying to juggle competing things. But if you can, I'm like, start saving like when you're pregnant, like, really early. Because I think we've all known this, but I have two nephews, and one just turned 21. We just got back from Nashville. The other one just drove my car the other day. He just got his permit. And I'm like, what happened? He literally was just born like a year ago. Like, he's my baby, right? And their baby's so short. And then all of a sudden, boom, like they're older. So like it happens pretty quickly. So if you can, even if it's like $50 a month, like whatever you can do, just set that aside, because it will really help us later down the road.
And what about letting the grandparents and all the people that want to, really do something for a special event, that, hey, we've got this college fund set up, and, if you're doing something for a birthday, this is a great way to help her support in, saving for college.
Yeah, I think it's great. I work with a lot of people who have like grandparents, or I've even worked with people who have trusts from like generations ago that the grandparents had put money aside for the kids, and it was like all the kids in the family. So I think that's great. I would say be really careful and talk to me, talk to your financial advisor, and talk to a estate planning attorney. Because I ran into a lot of problems where like grandparents put all this money aside, but if you don't pass it along correctly, it's really messing up my financial aid side and hurting them.
Okay. Well, that's a great add-on and disclosure to that. So thank you so much, Elisia. So what do you do if your child is already in college?
Yes. So there's quite a few things you can do, depending on where they're at in college, but when we're pulling money for school to make it affordable, we're not just pulling from one place, right? I'm pulling from many different places. So that's where we can start talking about, one, is your financial aid actually done correctly? Because a lot of the times, and I'm finding actually since COVID, it's like half the time it's wrong what you're getting from the school. I just got another call yesterday. Actually, I've gotten a call every day this week. But like the financial aid's wrong. Like they just messed it up. Yesterday I had a student call, and they're saying I owe $15, which isn't a big deal. But last quarter, she got an overage of $2,500. Like they gave her money actually to go to school. She has no debt. So It's not a big deal for $15, but she's like, where's my $2,500? And something got messed up. Right. So like things are just getting messed up. So we need to make sure, one, is it correct? And there's not $2,500 of grant money missing. Two, we can take advantage of private scholarships, and there's a whole system behind that. There's ways that we can get the students to contribute more. There's all kinds of tricks with it. So if they're in college, I'm like, just call me. I got to figure out the situation, and then we can make a plan for how we're going to pay for this.
Well, it's kind of like anything else, doing your taxes, estate planning, financing. You need to have an expert that knows and can navigate all through the changes and things are happening. And that's why it's so important to reach out to Elisia, and why I wanted to have her in the show is because she's an expert in this field. And when you hire somebody to take care of something that you don't have the knowledge on, you come out way ahead. So Elisia, have you ever helped anyone get scholarships and grants to pay for all of college tuition and living expenses? Is that possible?
Oh, absolutely. I've done that. I usually have 3 or 4 students every year that just for undergrad gets like fully 100% covered for everything. A lot of it is like those values, right? So we talk about that with family members, especially with the parents, because you'll have like, I'll have a conversation with the family and you'll often have, and it's usually the mom. Sorry, moms, it's usually mom. I've never had it be dad before. But they're like, oh, my kid wants to go to this school, and you run the numbers and you're like, that's going to be, I ran one last week. It was $275,000 that this family was going to have to come up with in parent loans, not in just the kids' loans. Overall, the school is more, but in parent loans. And I'm like, well, you can do it that way, or we could do it this way and actually have your school basically completely covered. Like, what do you want to do? Right. So some of it's like, we can make some choices and you might say, hey, we're actually okay with having to pay some money out of pocket. I mean, half of my clients are really high income. Like, I mean, so I work with clients all the time who can just write a check for school, but if not, we can come out with a little debt, you can come out with a lot of debt, you can come out with none. Let's make those decisions together, so you're making an informed decision
and the best financial decision. Yes.
Yeah. Not just like trying to get through it and you have no idea what you're doing. Right.
Absolutely. So Elisia, what can you do if your children have graduated and have student or parent loans?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff you can do with loans. So yeah, if you did not talk to me when your kids were in high school and they've now graduated, there's a lot of stuff you can do with loans. So a few things. One, you can get forgiveness on your loans. So when people talk about, misnomer, people talk about student loan forgiveness like it's one thing. Like there's this one program that's student loan forgiveness, and there's not. I alone work with over 75 different forgiveness programs. Like there are so many different forgiveness programs, and they all have their own rules and like all these different things you have to follow. So there's forgiveness. You can get full forgiveness. You can get partial forgiveness, right? But then you also have just different strategies, right? That, like, for example, we could put you on different plans where maybe you don't have a lot of debt, right? Maybe you only have like 30,000 in student loans, which would be like a $300 payment a month when you graduate. But when you're 22, like that's a lot of money. And so sometimes you're like, actually, maybe it doesn't make sense to get forgiveness. Maybe it actually makes more sense to like, let's make that so your monthly payment is $100 a month. But you want to use that money to save for a house or start saving for retirement. So that's where we can actually sit. We can run the numbers, right? You'll know exactly what your monthly payment would be and, the pros and cons. And then you can make that decision. And then we can even pull your financial advisor in that conversation and say, hey, I can save you $300 a month on your student loans. Right. And then the financial advisors are like, yeah, let's do that, because I'm going to take that and put that
and invest it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. So who can get their loans forgiven, Elisia?
Oh gosh. So the short version of that, like I'd say most people can get at least partial, if not full forgiveness, with the strategy. Right. I'd say really the people who we struggle to get forgiveness on loans are people who have really what I call baby loans. So under $30,000, right? So if you call me and you're like, I have $10,000 in student loans, I'm probably going to tell you like get a part-time job, right? But maybe not, right? Because I just had one of my friends just had a baby and she has $12,000 in student loans. And she was like, I can't work right now. Right. Like we're kind of penny pinching. And I'm like, okay, let's just we'll put your loans into a forgiveness program, right? You probably won't get forgiveness on it, but we can put you into the program, but that makes your monthly payment $0. And that saves you your $150 a month. And when you're just need 6 months or whatever for maternity leave, like maybe that's all you need. Right. So but other than that, the general rule is if it's a really small loan amount, it's harder to get forgiven, but higher amounts are actually way easier to get forgiven.
Interesting. So we talked about when you should start saving for college, and your answer was when you get pregnant. I love that.
If possible.
I love it. If possible. And again, like you said, I mean, it's $5, $10, $50. I mean, just Doug shares so much. I mean, it's just the exercise of you actually are creating the habit around there is something that's going in here. It's always top of mind. So how much should you save for college?
So right now in today's dollars, like kids are in high school right now, I'm telling parents like, I mean, save as much as you can, but in a perfect world, I would like to see like 50,000 saved. More would be better, like 50 to 100,000, because that would give me enough for like 1 to 2 years of education, right? Like I can make that stretch really far, right? But the reality is most people who call have nothing saved, or they have like 25,000 saved. But I always say, like, if you can get to that $100,000 mark in today's dollars, like you're going to be in a much better position. Now, if you have babies or, middle schoolers, that number, I mean, it's insane. It's really, really high. So we can figure out and run the amounts based on the projections and stuff, but it's going to be way higher. If you got babies, you're going to need like $200,000 saved.
Yeah. Crazy. So what is one thing that everyone should do when planning for college?
Start early.
Yeah.
Please start early.
I could pick that up. Yeah.
Please start early. Because when you're planning, so the planning phase of college is actually grades like 9 and 10. Okay. So that's the planning phase. And then the actual starting college application phase is 11th grade. Yeah. But like in practice, half of my business actually comes like August to October of senior year. So it's like right before applications are due, because people don't know any better. Right. Oh, wow. And so I get a lot of the calls at that time, and we do it, we make it work, but it's stressful. You're gonna have a lot of stuff to get through. So like, you're never going to call me too early, because if we call too early, I'm just going to say, call back in a year. Right. Yeah. Like, who cares? Yeah. Right. But if you call me too late, now we're rushing and it's very stressful. So,
yeah. So like anything else in life, start early, don't procrastinate. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what expenses are related to paying for college do most families not even think about? And it just kind of pops up as a surprise.
Well, besides living expenses, which families way underestimate, because in their head, they're still going from like when they were young. I was just reading an interesting stat the other day about how like an apartment in New York in 1940, like these grandparents or something owned it. But even if they adjusted it for today's inflation, it would be like $750 a month. Right. Even adjusted for inflation. And you're like, no way, that's like $3,000 apartment now. And so a lot of parents still think like you can get a cheap apartment as a college kid. And you're like, no, it's actually like the same cost as your mortgage. So they underestimate the living expenses. And then they forget about things like books, which they're like, yeah, I remember books are kind of expensive. And like, they're so much more expensive now. Or they think about, oh, my kid wants to go out of state. And you don't think about like the airfare cost, right? Like, those kinds of things, or my kid's going to want to go away for spring break. Like those kinds of things they usually forget about.
Yeah. So when should students begin applying for private scholarships?
Honestly, as early as possible. I have a friend who at the time when I met her son was like 8 years old. He's now in middle school. But she asked me that same question in the sense that she's just a friend. So I would text, hey, I found this scholarship. There's scholarships for little kids, right? Like draw a picture, like simple things. And she's already got like almost $10,000 in scholarships for her 12-year-old. Wow. So you can start really young. Obviously, most people don't do that, but I say start like 10th, 11th grade, start applying to those.
Yeah. So Elisia, how are you compensated? How do the parents pay for your services?
Yes, I'm a private company. So parents will pay me based on the needs that they have. So you can get a college admissions package with a certain number of hours with me. You can get financial aid help, a loan. We also have a scholarship program. You can just pay for scholarship support. So depending on what service that family needs, we'll kind of make a package that works for them.
Wonderful. So as I'm wrapping up my time with you, Elisia, what is a call to action or a shout out you'd like to give my listeners?
Yeah, I would say if you want to get a hold of me, scheduling a consultation is free and very easy. It's not an obligation. I'm not a salesperson. I'm an educator. So it doesn't hurt to give me a call, but go to collegeinsights.com. That's insights with an S. And from there, you'll get our number, email, and even just right on the main webpage, you can schedule your call with me and just book an appointment on my calendar.
Yeah, wonderful. Elisia, thank you so much again for coming into Virtual Studio and sharing your wealth of expertise with my listeners on planning for college.
Yeah, thank you for having me again.